Hey, what's up, everyone? Jonathan Allen here at Floodwater Studios, and we are going to go over a couple tricks for de-essers, couple different options. So let's hop into it.
Taking its turns and happiness I found along the way. I've thrown it all away.
So first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel, everyone who's commented. We love interacting with you guys. While you're here, go ahead and just click like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you know everything that's happening here at Floodwater. One thing I want to mention too is if you see the TV behind me, there's a really cool channel that I came across called AquaView. I mean, they're not sponsoring anything, not affiliated at all. It's just a really cool channel. I have a link to it down in the description of the video. Essentially, it's just like a fish tank scene. Some have music, always have kind of like the ambience noise of the fish tank, the water moving and stuff like that. Great to just kind of have in the background, chill out, just relax. Highly recommend you go check out that channel just for some peace and relaxation. But today we're going to hop into a session here for a song that I wrote, recorded, and I put out as part of the Wishful Forgetting album back in October. This song is called Coffee. And there's a lot of S's in this song. So there's a lot of words that are happening. I don't know what I was thinking, but there's ways to combat that, and there's ways to approach that. Today I want to give 2 tricks or tips on different ways that we can approach that. So let's hop into the session real quick here. I'm going to throw my cans on. So if we listen to the whole song together, we'll just throw the chorus on real quick.
The scenery had changed, but everything felt the same. I traded out my trees, but swear I feel the same breeze.
All right, so there, as you can hear, just with the words of the chorus itself, the scenery had changed, but everything felt the same. I traded out my trees, but swear I feel the same breeze. So there's a lot of things happening here that can really freak out frequencies that really pierce through, and we want to correct those. So what you heard here actually already has some correction on it. So we'll take a look here. So my vocal is right here, labeled Vox. It's violet because Vox starts with V and V is violet. So as you can tell, I did nothing to this session when I opened it. This is the final session that I put into the mastering software for everything. Everything's color-coded, named. I know exactly what is what, where it is. Everything's good to go, as you can see. Bounced out all my MIDI drums into audio files, so I'm living what I preach here. But let's take a look at the vocal itself real quick. So let's pull up the mixer real quick, go back to the vocal, and I'm going to go ahead, turn off this little compressor, which currently is working as my de-esser. So we're going to turn that off. We're going to turn off the reverb that's on here. And we're going to take a look at just this channel. Only thing I've done differently with this is set up a channel for the microphone here. Other than that, let's take a look. So as we can see, like I said, I have some EQ on here. Just really kind of rolling off those low ends, shaping the mids a little bit for my vocal tone specifically. I have the fat channel on here, compressor, using the FET comp here, doing a little bit of work. And then the equalizer, it's the vintage EQ that I was saying I use pretty much all the time. Just giving a little more shaping to things as well. But let's take a listen to this vocal soloed without any de-esser helping.
But everything felt the same. I traded out my trees, but swear I feel the same breeze.
So it's not actually overbearing because of me being conscious of this while I was recording. I mean, there's things that we want to try to get it right at the source of what we're doing. Some things we can control. Obviously, some things we can't control in the studio. But the S's are something that we really need to be mindful of, but there's ways to control those in post as well. So the first thing that I normally do is I'll grab a compressor, and as you can see here, it's set pretty strangely. So what I will do is I will turn on the filter and I will search for the frequencies where the S's are really coming through. So at this instance, it was 6.2K, and at that point, I take my ratio and I max it all the way out to 20:1, and I take my knee, put it at 0.1, lowest you can, so it's just flat across as much as possible. At this point, you can mess with your attack and your release on how quickly it's grabbing and letting go of that frequency. And then the threshold, obviously, the more you pull down the threshold, the more you drop the dB that it's going to allow through, the more compression you will see. But since we're filtering, it's only hitting these specific frequencies. So if we click on listen, we'll only hear the frequencies that it's compressing here. So let's take a listen. So you can hear those for everything. That's what's being grabbed. That's what's being compressed down. So now if we listen with just how it's set and we can hear the entire vocal, we can hear it drop, and it's just a little smoother for everything.
The scenery had changed, but everything felt the same.
So if you take notice over here on the right-hand side of the compressor, the line that's dropping down, that orange bar, that's showing how much compression is actually happening. So listen again, but watch this as well. And those who aren't new to this, those who are, you've been in the recording studio, you've worked with compressors, you kind of understand how these things work. Kudos, it's great. But for those of you who are newer to this, just make sure, pay attention to things that are happening on the screen. We tend to want to mix with our eyes because we'll see how the tracks themselves, how everything's kind of moving. So we think, okay, so if the volume is peaking at -12 here, we want this track to peak at -12 because then it's going to sound the same. That's not always the case. So you don't mix with your eyes alone. You have to listen to things, but I want you to just look at this and you can see the representation of what's actually happening. So keep an eye over here.
I traded out my trees, but swear I feel the same breeze.
So as you can tell, every time there was a s coming through, it's dropping that down. Now, one thing, especially on the compressor side of things, you can really exaggerate this to where it sounds like the performer has a lisp. So let me show you how I actually find the threshold that I'm looking for to help control this. So if I start back at the beginning of the chorus, I'm going to turn this down really far here.
The scenery had changed, but everything felt the same.
So as you can tell, the scenery had changed, everything, it's compressed so much and it's dropping it and bringing it down so much, it's like I have a lisp, which I don't. We still want it to sound natural. We want it to sound like the performance. We just need to tame some frequencies here. So let's listen again, and we'll start bringing the threshold up right past the point where it doesn't sound like a lisp anymore.
The scenery had changed, but everything felt the same. I traded out my trees, but swear I feel the same breeze.
So it's right about where we started, but this will help you hear that representation of what that compressor is doing for the de-esser itself. So too much compression here, and it's going to sound like somebody has a lisp. Once we start to bring that threshold up from that a little bit, release some of those frequencies, but we're still taming them at the same time, it's going to sound more natural, more of the performance that we're looking for, just not having those S's or T's popping through the mix and ruining things. So the compressor is normally what I usually use, but Studio One has a de-esser built into it. So there is a de-esser plugin. So we're going to go ahead and turn off this compressor. We're going to grab the de-esser and drag and drop it here. So again, it kind of starts at that 6.8K here, just to, as a reference point. That's normally where around S's and T's are going to kind of hang out. But you can always fine tune things. So let's listen to see exactly what we're working with, how this is set up.
The scenery had changed, but everything felt the same. I traded out.
So it's doing a pretty good job as it sits here. Let's mess with some things though. I want to listen just to the frequency here to see where we're at, and then we can kind of mess with the other settings also.
The scenery had changed, but everything felt the same.
Okay, I mean it's pretty close to exactly where it needs to be anyway. I mean they put a lot of work into this as is for Studio One themselves, so they know what they're doing. So let's keep it where it's at here, and then we can look at the shape. Shape is essentially narrow and wide, especially, so if we'll look at it this way, when we pull up the EQ here, it's essentially, changing your Q. So you can have something very narrow, you can have something very wide. It's just giving those options for the de-esser themselves. So we're sitting at 6.8K. Do we want the shape to be narrow at 6.8, or do we want it to include more frequencies around it to help tame that even more? So let's listen to the narrow here, and we're going to keep on the full range for things, and we'll see how that goes.
The scenery had changed, but everything felt the same.
And let's turn down the reduction now.
I traded out my trees, but swear I feel the same breeze.
All right, so the same thing with the reduction, especially if you compare it to how the compressor's working. When we turn the threshold way down, we get that lisp feeling. Same thing with the S reduction. When we start to turn that way down, think of that as the threshold for things. We're going to start to get that lisp as well. So even dropping it down, not that many decibels from where it was set at, we're starting to get that lisp also. So
the scenery had changed, but everything felt the same. I traded out my trees, but swear I feel the same breeze.
So I actually like that. Still, the S reduction brought it down just a little bit, just about 5 dB from where it was set. Switching that to the wide shape, so it's including a little more frequencies, which how it works with anything that you're doing, how the Q you set it on your EQ, or when you're working with this thing as well for the de-esser, it gives it more of that gentle. I mean, you can exaggerate things for sure, but it seems like, I should say, this is giving it more of a gentle cue around that 6.8K to where it's kind of just grabbing the edges of the other frequencies and helping tame a little bit. Let's take a listen to what gentle sounds like as opposed to full, and then let's see how it all sounds in the mix.
The scenery had changed, but everything felt the same. I traded out my trees, but swear I feel the same breeze.
So I'm not sure if I hear a huge difference going between the full or the gentle for the range, but I mean, that could just be me as well. But let's listen to what the whole thing sounds like in the mix using this de-esser as opposed to the compressor that I originally recorded everything with. So we're going to throw the reverb back on so it sits where I want it, and then let's listen to verse 2.
Driving when all the signs said road closed ahead, I was staring at myself and thinking just of the end. But I made the choice to move on again. This time I meant it.
Alright, so you can see the de-esser's doing a lot of work on this song. It's like I decided I wanted all words that had S's in them. I'm not exactly sure, but it's doing the work it's supposed to do. It sounded good to my ears. So what did you guys think about how this is all set up? You have the compressor section, you have a de-esser. Which one do you think sounded better? Which one do you think you would use more? Let us know down in the comments section. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already. We really appreciate you guys. Tap that notification bell so you can see everything coming out from Floodwater. And if you haven't caught last week's episode that we put out, we were talking about, like I said at the beginning here, I converted my MIDI drums, so the MIDI file that's on screen, into audio files multi-track, so I can go ahead and process them how I want. You can also process in the MIDI form, but I like to commit to everything, so when I threw it into the audio files, I really had to go back and just re-record drums if I wasn't happy with something that was going on. But I hope you guys have a great day today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. See ya.